It's another exciting Monday afternoon. We are here once more to take a look at what is happening in this great continent of ours on the program Africa Discourse, and I am Wilson Omasha. Today we're taking a look at the global price mechanism, its impact on African markets. You know, Africa, they say they have a good population when it comes to business, when it comes to market, when it comes to economy. They have the natural resources. When you talk about endowment, talk about human and natural resources. But how come this great continent has been bedeviled by poverty, lack and want, retardation in the economy, retardation in politics, retardation in so many aspects and facets of the society? To the extent that Africa may just be able to churn out something from its numerous resources, but they are not in charge of regulating what they give out globally. The global price mechanism, what is it all about? Who put it in place? And how it affects you and I? That is what we'll take a look at today on this discussion segment. To be here in the studio, I have an educationist, a lecturer, political analyst, human rights activist, you just name it. Join me, welcome Destiny Owobo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
It's been a while.
Nice to have
You've been postponing, and busy, but today you are here.
Yeah.
All right. And here we are.
Yeah.
People have been complaining, especially from African continents. What is really our problem? Talking about the regulation, global price mechanism.
Yes. Yes, the issue with Africa has always been the same issue of exporting primary commodities. You know, Africa's biggest problem is in the primary sector. Africa is seen as a home of raw materials for the rest of the world, but goods have to be processed and added value to. Africa is seen as one of the countries who exports crude oil, primary products, and then imports secondary and tertiary products from the developed world. So we have been experiencing what we call a miserizing growth. That is spending, receiving for example, you see 5 naira for exporting something, and then you pay 20 naira for importing the same item, which has been replenished, has been refined and converted. So Africa has been in that box for the last 5 decades. We have still not been able to escape from that poverty trap, the poverty of always basing all our export commodities on primary products. So we need to learn how to create secondary products, tertiary products like manufacturing. Manufacturing, creating tourism, services, banking, finance, and other areas. Those are the areas where most of the money of the world goes to nowadays. But Africa is still lagging behind the primary products. So I think that's the problem. So anytime there's a shock in the international community, it directly affects Africa negatively, because we are still at the lowest level of development. And so we bear the burden of anything that happens in the international community. Yeah.
All right, we bear the burden of anything that happens in the international community. Yes. Now, take a look at what you just said, the primary resources, and of course, getting into the secondary resources. Now, we are blessed with human and natural resources.
Yes.
People are now asking, what are the determinant factor on how these prices are being regulated? After all, these are our own property. This is what we give out to the world.
Yes.
How would it be the one to tell us how much or how we give it out to the world? Talking about price tag.
Okay. We must understand something. Pricing is about demand and supply. It's not something in the purview of what you have. It's about demand and supply. Now, the world depends on primary products. But the demand for primary products are dissipated around the world in terms of countries trying to produce manufacturing goods, more advanced goods. But for the secondary products, they have a certain monopoly over it. Africa does not have a monopoly of primary products. China, for instance, is one of the biggest producers of agricultural products in the world. But it also does very well in manufacturing and other areas. The United States is one of the biggest producers of agricultural products in the world. But 1% of the US production is only for primary products, 1%. It contributes 1% to their GDP. They are farmers, the American farmers can feed the entire Africa because they do massive mechanized farming. So there are so many players in the agricultural space, primary product space, okay? But there are not very many players in the tertiary and secondary product space. You know, for instance, a country like Singapore, there's no agriculture. It contributes nothing to their GDP. 82% of the wealth of Singapore is from services, banking, insurance, shipping, transportation. Agriculture is negligible, you know. So they focus more on where the action is. The action is in high-grade manufacturing, services and financial services generally, technology and all those areas. So primary products have low value added, you know. We are looking at sugarcane and sugar, for instance. Sugar is a refined product. Sugarcane is a basic product. The basic input for sugar is sugarcane. So you produce sugarcane, you sell it to me at 10 naira, for instance. I work it into a usable product, and I sell it back to you for 22 naira. You need the sugarcane more than I need your... You need the sugar more than I need your sugarcane. So you understand? So these few countries, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, US, Canada, Germany, and others, they are high-grade, service-oriented countries, more advanced in manufacturing and services. Whereas the poor countries, Africa only contributes about $12 trillion to the world. The GDP of the world is roughly about $90 trillion. Africa contributes about $12. America alone contributes about $19 trillion. It's a high manufacturing and service industry. So we must get beyond the basic level of development. We must invest in manufacturing, we must invest in technology, we must invest in production of high-value services, banking, insurance, transportation, hoteling, tourism. That's where most of the money comes from nowadays. And since Africa refused, if Africa does not get out of this rudimentary economy of crude oil, mineral resources and others, like I said, we'll always be at the receiving end. You know, that's the role of education, the role of investment in human development. So when Bill Gates came to Nigeria the other time, he said that the policies of the government does not address the human development factor. You know, we are investing in things instead of in people. In developed countries, they invest in people, not just things, because people are creative. People can engineer nothing from something, I mean something from nothing. So it is the mind, jobs relating to the minds, advanced systems that bring money nowadays. But Africa has not gotten to that point yet. So maybe sometime, as we are making, governments are planning to do that, they are investing in technology and other things. It takes time. But the way it is, Africa is still not there.
All right, now you hammered on education.
Yes.
You hammered on technology.
Yes.
You hammered on also investing in people or persons.
Yes, in people. Yes.
Okay, fine. Now let's take off from technology.
Okay.
Now, what do you think is our problem? Because right now, according to what is available, you can easily buy tech. You can go out there, be trained.
Yes.
You can go out there also, get the knowledge, come back, and do what you have to do for your country in this continent to blossom.
Okay.
What is really the problem?
Yes. Technology is not the property of one country nowadays. In the global space, technology is easily transferred from one country to another. But the problem is you need to have a basic manufacturing industry. For instance, this chair has several components. Okay, it's a compendium of products, allied products related. You know, Nigeria does not need to know how to make a car or know how to develop a big plane, but we can make parts of it. Parts of it. You know, no country is a monopoly of technology nowadays. Most US companies invest most of their components from China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and those other countries. So when you check about a small phone, for instance, it takes about 600 jobs to make a small phone. 600 jobs.
600 jobs.
To make a small phone. Just that phone. If you open the phone, you're going to see panels upon panels. There's an IC from Hong Kong. There's the battery from Germany. There is the softwares from different countries. We have Facebook, we have WhatsApp, we have Twitter. We have what we call the infrared, the Bluetooth technology. We have FlashShare. These are companies. Each of them, you see, they are companies. So to make one phone nowadays, you do not need to have the knowledge of everything. They they contract different aspects of the phone to different countries and different expertise countries in those areas. So Nigeria needs to have what we call comparative advantage in certain areas. For instance, what about the plastic around the phone? What about the tires of a car? What about the wheels? We have steel. Nigeria has one of the largest steel deposits in the world. You know, in Ajaokuta and Alaja. Nigeria can produce steel and generate billions of dollars. But we need concrete investment. We need steel for roads, for houses. We need it for cars. We need it for bikes. We need it for anything that requires steel. But that industry is dead. So we do not need to know how to make a car. But if we develop the basic, they call it basic engineering industry, fabrication, basic designing, basic refining processes. We don't need the advanced high tech, so that countries can say, okay, we want to buy steel, $200 billion worth of steel from Nigeria. You know, steel, you just need to move it from a basic form to a usable form where it can be sold. So the federal government should invest in steel. We should invest in agricultural processing. For instance, while we focus on the basic agriculture, what we need is to process it into exportable materials, so that people can take it from there. We must add value to it. You know, you must add value to that level you're already used to. You know, must add value to it before it can become, you can earn a lot of foreign exchange from it. So, but we are not taking advantage. We need to be creative. There are aspects in Nigeria we can have our competencies. We can have a car manufacturing plant all over, built around Africa, West Africa, just to come and source our steel, for instance. We can have companies coming to Nigeria to come and buy only our tires. Do you understand that? You don't need to have...
But these steels, these tires you're talking about, they have standard of fixed price being regulated, not even from Africa.
Yes.
But from other external forces.
Yes.
Because we have some countries where in Africa you get to manufacture these things, but the pricing is the problem. It doesn't emanate from these countries in Africa. It's been controlled from outside Africa. Why is it so? That is the question here.
It is so because, like I told you, it is where demand is that where price is determined. Where demand is. It's not where the supply is coming from. It's where demand is. The GDP of a country measures the size of the economy and where the demand lies, the strength of demand. The Western countries, the West, they are the big buyers of these products we talk about. Because they are the big buyers, they have a lot of control over, and they are powerful politically. They have a lot of control about what happens to the price. For instance, let's look at crude oil, for instance. Yeah. Nigeria is, I think, the 11th largest producer of crude oil in the world, 6th largest within OPEC. But OPEC is a body that is filled with a lot of people. We have Saudi Arabia, they produce about 10 million barrels. Nigeria produces about 2.2 million barrels a day. And then most of this supply still comes from these advanced countries, like Saudi Arabia and others. And so the demand comes from US, China, and those other countries, not African countries. The demand for these products still comes from the advanced countries. The supply comes mainly from them. The demand comes mainly from them. So if the supply and the demand are located in the West, then the price will be determined there. Do you understand that? America is one of the biggest buyers of crude oil in the world. China is one of the second biggest buyer of crude oil in the world. And so there's a nexus between demand and supply. Supply meets demand at the point of the West. When the price strikes, price is determined at the point of negotiation between buyer and seller. That's basic. If you want to buy something, you go to Ring Road. Yeah. You have to tell somebody, I want to buy this. And the person says, how much is it? You say 300. The person says, no, why don't you sell it for 250? You bargain. And then you meet at a certain price. Now, if the buyer and the seller are different people, do you understand? The major buyers and the major sellers are different people. Then the price will be located where they buy. Do you understand that? It's like a poor man going to live in a rich neighborhood. The price of what he buys in the rich neighborhood is not determined by him, but determined by what happens, what the rich people buy. So if a poor person is living in a rich neighborhood, the prices are no longer determined by his presence. It's determined by the forces of demand and supply in his neighborhood. And so he'll be forced to buy a bottle of Coke in that neighborhood for 600 naira because he chose to play in that area. But if a rich person comes to a poor neighborhood, the price of goods and services are determined in the poor neighborhood. Do you understand that? And so the rich person normally finds it cheaper to buy in the poor neighborhood because he's the only big man in the place. The biggest buyers in the area are the people in the area.
Now, talk about in terms of rich and poor, where does Africa belong to from your analysis?
Africa is regarded as the third world country because there's a first world and a second world. The level of worlds people describe is in income level. The first world countries are the US, the G8 countries, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, and others. They are called first world. The second world countries are called second world because they are lower in income to the first world countries. The first world countries are those people who earn $40,000 and above per annum, I mean, on average. The second world countries are between $20,000 and $30,000 on average. Nigeria is just about $2,500 to $3,000. So, given the gap, it means Nigeria is in the third world. We are called developing for some reason. Poor, not just developing, poor developing. Because we are in the poorest segment of the world. The rich West are the first world. Eastern Europe is in the second world. Russia, Spain, and others, they're in the second world. Africa, Latin America, they're in the third world. So we are in the worst corner of the global space. You know, so you must look at it from that angle. The worst corner of the global space. That is where Nigeria and some other countries, sub-Saharan Africa, there is regarded as third world poor. Why are they poor? They are poor because their population is very high, overpopulated.
But now this population is big market.
Yeah,
it's huge market. So why can't Africa convert the population into income?
Okay.
Because global trend now is that once you have the population, you have the market. You determine whatever comes in or goes out of the market. You, to a large extent, determine prices, and that is where Africa comes into play. They have the population. So why can't they use the population to make something out of the global price regulatory mechanism?
Yes, the population argument is misguided. It is not population that is the market. It is the purchasing power of the population. It is not population. I'll give you some statistics. South Africa, Mercedes-Benz came to invest in Nigeria in 2015. They wanted to come to invest in Nigeria, so they did a survey of the demand power of Nigeria. Nigeria has 186 million people, but they discovered that only 100,000 Mercedes-Benz products are bought in this country every year. New Mercedes-Benz products, 186 million. South Africa has 40 million, but they shipped 650,000 Mercedes-Benz products, new ones, into South Africa. If you were Mercedes-Benz, where would you site your factory, for instance? A country that is 186 million, that can only buy 100,000 of your product, or a country with 40 million that ships in 650,000 of your products. Because the per capita income of Nigeria is just about $3,000. That of South Africa is about $8,000. So South Africans can afford to buy Mercedes-Benz products. So it is the buying power that we use, not population. There are countries that are very populated, but they are poor. They can't buy global goods and services. So investors look at the buying power. What is the buying power? So Nigeria's population is potential power. It's not yet latent power.
Potential power.
Potential in population. That means if we develop our economy and we increase our income, it's a juicy market. 180 million people buying things, that's a juicy market. But what if these 180 million people do not have the resources? They don't have jobs. Unemployment rate in Nigeria is about 26%. Inflation rate is about 24%. Interest rate is about 12 to 15%. All the indices are poor. If 26% of a population do not have jobs, we can estimate that they can't buy certain products. So it's not just the population. You know that if you have a family that has 5 children, and then the average income is 1 million, and then you have another family that has 26 children, and the average income is still 1 million, then your mind tells you that, I mean, the income of the family is 1 million. That the family that has few children and more income can buy more, isn't it? So Nigeria is not, our population is not an asset yet until we generate a lot of income to buy goods and services at world standard.
At world standard.
World
now,
standard.
You're going back again to the world standard, because it's all about global price control mechanism,
Yes.
the impact on African market,
Yes.
the world standard.
World standard, yes.
Could you please throw more light on that?
Yes, what it means is,
Because right now, Africans, yes, though we are still down there, but at least we're producing some things, but the pricing is not in our hands.
no, it's not. It's not going to be in our hands. It's not something we can wish away. Like I told you, the buying and the selling, the big bulk of buying and selling takes place at the world standard, not at the African standard. It is where the prices meet, not here. Do you understand? But we can take advantage of our position in the world. And how do we take advantage? We must leverage on our population. It's an asset. We can leverage on our population. How do you leverage on your population? We develop intellectual skills, high human skills, not material skills. For instance, look at what China did. They leveraged on it. China is 1.7 billion people. It was waste to the economic space of the world. It was waste. From the economic perspective, it means nothing. Japan is just the population of Nigeria. Japan was a superpower in the East. It's still a superpower until China woke up. It was a sleeping giant that woke up. With 1.7 billion people, that is the biggest market in the world. But it was not market yet. Japan was still very rich, advanced with everything, until China woke up and started doing reforms. Converted from communism, they started doing capital reforms. And then they started investing in education, high-tech, manufacturing, and others. As I speak to you now, China woke up in the last 20 years to be a giant. For the first time, as I speak to you, every week, China produces over 30 billionaires. Every week. Why? They are the fastest growing economy in the world. Why? The potential we are talking about. Because if you open a shop in China, you have 1.7 billion people waiting to buy from you. But they were always there. They were poor. Now they started making investments. Any Chinese billionaire that sets up a small business in China, we compete with an American. Because America is just 330 million, China is 1.7 billion people. So if China's economy is waking up, if you do anything in China, you make lots of money. There are buyers waiting. You do not need to export it within China.
Within China?
Within China.
So why can't Africa do the same? That's the question right now.
That is what I said about we need to invest in human development. We need to take advantage of our population. We are already making steps in that direction. I was in this country just about 25 years ago. The music industry in Africa, in Nigeria, was almost dead. We made music, but we didn't know how to take advantage of the population. But now you see Olamide, you see the Wizkids, they earn lots. They earn foreign exchange now. They travel around the world. They make money. Why? They started making the money here. When Nigerians got beyond a certain level to buy music and appreciate it, comedy and things like that, then they took off. You hardly see a singer in Africa competing with a Nigerian singer in terms of income. You know why? He has to sing in a certain language. If you were born in Ghana, Ghana is just 37 million in population, and you do a song with the Ghanaian language, before it sells to Nigeria, it has to be really great. But Olamide does the song. The Yoruba people in this country alone are over 60 million, and speaks his language. There are 60 million people willing to buy it. You see what population does. So the song may not be very great, but the people are waiting. Fino does a song in the East. There are 70 million people waiting to buy it. That's what population does for you. So if people are getting beyond the basic level, your population can be an advantage. So Nigeria should convert our population to potential so that we can determine our prices.
All right, converting population to potential. You talked about, you drew an analogy with South Africa and of course Nigeria,
yes,
and of course other sub-Saharan parts of Africa, because all about the impact this global price mechanism is having in our market.
Yes.
But in course of your discourse, you mentioned politics. Now that will be the next aspect we are going to dive into in this discussion after this break. Global price control mechanism impact on African markets. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you just joined us, this is Africa Discourse. We're taking a look at global price control mechanism and impact on African markets. And I will be here, Destiny Owobo. Now, you mentioned politics.
Yes.
Take it up from there.
Yes, politics, it's power, where the power is. And like I said, it's also important. The global balance of power is also in this same West. It is often said that the person who plays the piper dictates the tune. You know, like I told you, the U.S. produces $19 trillion worth of products. That's what their GDP says. Germany, $7 trillion. China, $16 trillion. They dictate the tune of this world. And incidentally, these same countries are in the Security Council in the UN. There's a reason why they are there. You are going to have US there. You have Russia there. You have England there. You have France there. You have China there. These 5 countries are superpowers. They dictate the politics of this world because they are one of the richest nations on earth. So there's a correlation between economics and politics. When a country begins to develop economically, it develops politically too. So it can speak more. China was redundant in the first 50 years of this last century, but now China is a superpower. To understand the relationship, China and the US, they are doing sanctions against each other now.
The trade war.
The trade war is economics and politics at play there. The US feels China is becoming a superpower at its expense, because they accuse China of stealing technology. They come to the US, they copy technology, they go there, given that I told you they have population, they use the technology and they make lots of money. China is coming to Africa to come and give loans to Africa to spread its influence. Why are they coming to Africa? The other day they gave Africa about $400 billion loan. Why do you think somebody wants to give you a loan just like that? They gave them loan and then they hedged it against some assets in Africa, some ports. They hedged it to your port. If you don't pay, they seize your port. China is putting itself in the global space. They control Africa, but Africa was controlled by the West before. The US, England, France, and others. China is trying to put its feet in Africa to have a lot of control over African resources. That's one. And then America is losing that power. Where is the power coming from? It's losing the power because China is rich and can afford it. So if a country invests in its economy and develops rapidly, it sends signals to the world that it's a superpower coming. Given that Nigeria is the biggest black nation on earth, by population, Nigeria is the biggest black nation on planet Earth. There's no reason why Nigeria should not have been a member of the Permanent Security Council of the UN if it knew what it was doing. The black capital on earth is Nigeria. That's what I like to call it.
Black capital.
That is the country you find the highest number of black people. It's my country. Nigeria is an asset. It means that blacks everywhere can trace their personhood to Africa, to Nigeria. So if Nigeria was an economic superpower, it would have become a member of the UN Security Council, the Permanent Security Council. It will have a voice in determining the politics and the economies of this world. But Nigeria as a country is economically negligible. You can't, when you say negligible, the contribution of Nigeria to the global income is just 0.3%, not up to 1%. 0.3%. Whereas America's contribution to the entire planet is about 20%. The one who plays the piper dictates the tune.
So what you're saying right now, politics and economy goes hand in hand.
They are it's a wonderful marriage. When economics is great, politics, global politics is great. You have more to offer, so more is expected from you too. Do you understand that? So that's the connection. Yes.
Now, you've talked about politics. You mentioned that technology, and of course, you said everything is everything boils down to education.
Yes.
Are you now saying that if Africa can get its educational foundation right, we'll be up there?
No doubt. But not just education. Because we have to look at it from, because a famous Englishman said, if a man is good with the hammer, he will say every problem is nail. You know, in other words, economists, I'm an economist.
Yeah.
Economists tends to see problems from an economic point of view, and think that if it is solved at economic point of view, then it is solved at all levels. But we have to look at it holistically. There is no country in the world that ever did anything significant without consciously investing in its education. It is impossible. I'll give you statistics of the 10 richest countries in the world. Literacy rate in England is 98%. What that means is that 98 out of every 100 Englishmen alive is
literate.
Very literate. Literacy rate in Japan is 100%. US 97%, Australia 99%. All the advanced countries is above 95%. Okay? The role of education. 35% of Americans go to the university. 40% of Englishmen go to the university. 40%, 4 out of every 10 is a graduate. So there's a correlation between high levels of education and wealth and civilization. But in Nigeria, literacy rate is just 69%. Out of the 69%, only 6% of Nigerians go to the university. That's what do you expect from a people? Somebody once said the level of development of a country is dependent on the level of education that the citizens have. Do you understand that? So there's a correlation between quality education and development. Development is not only about economics. It's about social development, the way people think, the way they react to things. When you make laws in a country where people are educated, they obey the laws easily because they understand the importance of laws. That's why education works. The politics is developed too. You can't go and pay a professor 5,000 naira to vote in an election. You're insulting his intelligence, no matter how poor he is. Because he's a professor, he's educated, he understands the role of politics. He understands what it means when he puts his hand on the vote machine. You know? So when people are educated, their religious life is developed, their political life is developed, their social life is developed, their legal systems are developed, even the way policemen treat citizens is developed. Like you watch movies, you see the way Americans, when they want to arrest a person, they still say, "Good morning, sir. Can I see your vehicle license?" They sound educated. But here you see policemen, you see people.
Oh, all right,
no,
let's
I'm not going
just
to mention names.
Okay.
You see a lot of people. We can see education affects everything we do. It affects everything we do. Education is civility, and civility has a relationship with development. So development is not only about money; it's about quality of life, the way people think, the way they respond to issues. In some countries, when government policies are wrong, the people go on a peaceful protest, national peaceful protest, and they can control it without destroying one government property. To control 4,000 people to come for a protest without making sure that they don't destroy anything, you must be able to communicate to them directly, and they must understand what you're saying. But in a country where people are not very educated, if you raise a protest for something, people will hijack it and take advantage of it and make nonsense out of it. So there's this connection. So government, and Nigeria is not even helping. We are investing nothing more than 8% in education. England is investing at least 25% of their budget in education. That is one of the most educated countries in the world. They still spend 1/4 of their budget on education. What does that tell you? UNESCO standard is 26%. Nigeria is still roughly between 6 and 10%. We need to invest in primary education, secondary education, especially on technologically oriented education, because that's where the action is. The action is in creating with knowledge, not in having the knowledge. That is where China and these other countries got it right. In China, an average 20-year-old can develop a drone with simple basic science and technology. You know, so we must get education right. Once we get that right, good things normally follow. But as much as we continue to play with our education, we see it as wishy-washy, whether you like it or not. The country will not, mathematically speaking, the country never develops if it is not well educated.
All right, thank you so much. Before we call it a wrap on this show, Destiny,
yes.
What advice do you have for Africans right now to take their destiny into their hands? Because it's like their destiny is in the hands of this global price control mechanism and other global bodies that tend to tell Africa when to sneeze, when to breathe, when to jump, when to do just practically everything to make them relevant. Still, Africa somehow is still lagging behind and not that relevant. We talk about global scheme.
Okay, I would like to state 4 things that Africa should do. They should prioritize education, 1, especially basic education. They should invest heavily on it. Secondly, they should they should set up legal systems, protect property rights. One of the reasons why foreigners do not come to do business in Africa as much as they would love to is because they are not sure of their investments. So we must have standard political systems, stable political systems. And one of the most respected political systems in the world is democracy. So our government, the transition from power, to another power should be peaceful and seamless. Because nobody wants to put $10 billion in the country and then a change of government changes the policy. Nobody wants that. So when we have done a lot of progress. I must give credit. In the last 10 years, African economies and democracies have come of age. We have been seeing seamless movement of power from one regime to another. And that is good. And that's why you see some countries, Kenya, Ethiopia, and others, they are coming up strong. People are coming to invest in those countries. So like Nigeria now, the next election is coming. We need to communicate to the world that we are mature enough to handle an election, a free, credible, and fair election, and transfer power neatly. It makes the world say, wow, that's a country where my investment is secure. That's 2, must get the environment right. Number 3, we must also develop our cultural orientation. It is commonly believed, Africa is the most religious continent on earth. In economics, there's a correlation between religion and poverty. Many researches have proved that the more religious a country is, the more poor it becomes.
We don't want to say that about Nigeria.
I don't want to say that
because people define that aspect.
What that means is we are looking at total. If you're an economist, you understand the argument.
Yeah.
Countries that take their destiny in their hands, instead of throwing it to outer forces like gods and devils, tend to do better. The richest countries on earth, they are not religiously oriented. By religion, I mean throwing your body to a certain outer space. Countries that are pragmatic, that deal with problems as they come, tend to do well than countries that wish it was better. And religious faith, misunderstood, not the real faith, misunderstood, tells some people that it's not by your hard work, it's not by your intelligence, it's by God's favor. That dogma forces people to be poor because they will not like to work hard to make it happen. But in civilized, developed countries, when the white man wants to do something, they go for it with all of their heart. They know the gods exist. But the white man's mentality is the gods will not do for you what you will not do for yourself. Okay? So we must reappraise our religious values into working. Religion, faith working, not wishy-washy working. We wish things to happen to us. We have to get to work. We have to. Now, if you check African countries, the billboards in developed countries, when you see billboards, they are actually for business purposes. Yeah. But in Africa, our billboards. Sorry, if I'm offending you. In Africa, while we are religious, is good. It's a good thing. Yeah. It's a good thing. It's not only in Africa. In the US, America is a very religious country too. I don't want to misunderstand.
You don't want to get it twisted.
Yes, America, for instance, is a very religious country, and it's also a very developed country. But the difference between the American religion and the African religion, the Americans also believe that they can do it if they try. If they try. So we need to imbibe that kind of American kind of religion. Okay. Where we set up businesses, work hard, try to fix our systems, while we allow God to take care of the other systems which we do not have control over. If that is what religion means, then religion should be fixed in Africa. Then number 4 thing we need to do in Africa, we need to really integrate into the world economy. You know why? The world is now globalized. No country can succeed in isolation. So African companies need to find a way to grow and list in foreign exchanges, take their businesses to the other parts of the world and generate income back to Africa. Instead of looking at the world coming to Africa to come and give us money, we should look at the world as a market itself, where we can go and put our feet on the ground. This idea of going to Europe to go and collect loans from them does not make Africa be rich. If that was the case, if you go to around, you see people who beg for resources.
Yeah.
They are usually not the richest.
All
the
right.
people who are rich are those who work.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You can just go on and on, Destiny. I really appreciate your wonderful analysis. Well, you've heard him.
Yes.
But as we speak, one of them will be like for the very just now, talking about right now, currently, or just now in Pigeon English Palace,
Yes.
Africa is still under the influence of this global price control mechanism.
Yes.
They dictate it, they place it, and it gave reasons for that. When are we going to wake up?
Okay.
When are we going to take our destiny in our hands? China, they choose to wake up, and now they're giving US serious run for their money. They have the population. But 20 years back, 30 years ago, they were not as strong and as vibrant as this. They choose to wake up. They took advantage of their economy, took advantage of the population, of their tech here, the mind. And here we are, having a population. When is Africa going to really wake up? Wake up! Wake up! Tomorrow, on International Forum, we'll take a look at the just concluded midterm US election. Intriguing. Lots and lots of result gotten. Anyway, bye for now.